My name is Octavio 34, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. Growing up, I watched my sister get handed everything while I worked for mine. Last month, I discovered something that shattered our family dynamics forever. A $2 million trust fund my father had secretly set up just for her. So I made a decision to stop subsidizing their vacation home. A few weeks later, my phone lit up with Dad's text. The property taxes are due. No hello, no check-in. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself when family takes advantage. I grew up in a leafy suburb just outside Portland, in a neighborhood where every house had a two-car garage and a neatly trimmed lawn. My father Gregory built his wealth in real estate development, transforming abandoned industrial areas into luxury apartments. He worked 60-hour weeks but always made it home for Sunday dinners. My mother Diana gave up her elementary school teaching career when I was born to become a full-time homemaker. They provided us with a comfortable upper-middle-class life, private schools, summer camps, and annual family vacations. My sister Melissa arrived 2 years after me, and from day one the family dynamic shifted. I don't remember a time when she wasn't the center of attention. As a toddler, her tantrums would bring the household to a standstill. My parents would rush to appease her offering toys, treats, or whatever she demanded. Melissa is just more sensitive. Mom would explain when I questioned the different rules. Some children need more support. I quickly learned that being the responsible one meant being overlooked. In 4th grade, I won the school science fair with a project on renewable energy. My parents attended the ceremony, but left early because Melissa was performing in a minor role in her 2nd grade play. My blue ribbon was acknowledged with a quick, "Good job, son," while Melissa's participation trophy earned a celebration dinner. This pattern continued through our teenage years. When I turned 16, I got a part-time job at a local electronics store to save for my first car. My father promised to match whatever I saved. After a year of working weekends, I had $4,000. True to his word, Dad matched it, and I bought a decent used Honda. When Melissa turned 16, she demanded a car as a birthday gift. She got a brand new Volkswagen without having worked a single day. "Your sister isn't as independent as you," Dad explained, when I questioned this. "We don't want her taking the bus." The inequity stung, but I told myself that independence was its own reward. College brought more of the same. I earned a partial scholarship to the University of Washington for computer science, covering about half my tuition. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus IT department to cover rent and expenses, taking out minimal loans for the remaining tuition. I graduated with a respectable GPA, despite my work schedule. Melissa chose Berkeley because she loved the vibe, despite having no clear academic interests. She changed her major 3 times, took 5 years to graduate with a communications degree, and spent more time at parties than the library. Our parents covered every penny tuition, a private apartment, a car, and a generous monthly allowance. During one Thanksgiving break, I overheard Dad talking to Mom about having to liquidate one of his investment accounts to cover Melissa's unexpected 5th year. That same weekend, he lectured me about the importance of starting retirement savings early. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I nodded and took his advice. I already had $3,000 in a Roth IRA from my campus job savings. Despite these disparities, I maintained a close relationship with my family. I attributed the different treatment to my parents' perception that Melissa needed more support. I prided myself on being self-sufficient and tried not to let resentment take root. After all, family is family, and I'd been raised to value those bonds above all else. Still, as we entered adulthood, I couldn't help but notice how these early patterns had shaped us. I had become hyper-responsible, sometimes to my detriment, while Melissa seemed incapable of managing the basic requirements of adult life. I didn't realize then how much these dynamics would affect our relationship in the years to come, or how dramatically things would change when I finally discovered the truth about my father's financial planning. After graduating, I landed an entry-level developer position at a tech startup in Seattle. The starting salary was modest, but the potential for growth was tremendous. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Capitol Hill, living frugally while focusing on building my career. 90-hour work weeks became my norm during product launches. Within 3 years, I had been promoted twice, and doubled my salary. Meanwhile, Melissa's post-college journey was tumultuous. She moved back home after graduation and cycled through 5 jobs in her first year, quitting each one because of toxic work environments or limited growth opportunities. In reality, she couldn't handle basic accountability. Dad pulled strings to get her hired at his friend's marketing firm, but she was let go after repeatedly missing deadlines. Despite my own financial constraints, I made regular trips home to Portland. During one visit, I found Mom stressed about their retirement planning. Dad's business had hit a rough patch during the economic downturn, and they dipped into their savings more than they'd planned to support Melissa. "We'll be okay," Mom assured me, "but the vacation property is becoming a burden." The vacation property she referred to was a lakeside cabin in northern Washington that had been in our family since I was 10. We spent every summer there, and it held some of my happiest childhood memories. The thought of losing it felt like losing a piece of our family history. "I can help," I offered without hesitation. "I've been doing well at work." That became the beginning of my role as the family financial safety net. I initially agreed to cover the property taxes and insurance on the vacation home, about $8,000 annually. As my career progressed and my income grew, so did my contributions. I paid for a new roof when the old one leaked, covered the cost of updating the plumbing system, and funded a kitchen renovation when the original appliances finally gave out. By my early 30s, I was a senior software engineer at a major tech company with a salary that put me in the top 5% of earners in Seattle. I met Lauren, a brilliant environmental lawyer, at a charity event. We connected instantly over shared values and complementary personalities. After 2 years of dating, we moved in together discussing marriage and children as part of our future. While my life was coming together, Melissa's continued to be chaotic. At 32, she had finally secured stable employment as a social media coordinator, but her spending habits were disastrous. She rented an apartment she couldn't afford, leased a luxury car that consumed a quarter of her monthly income, and regularly maxed out credit cards on designer clothes and lavish vacations documented meticulously on Instagram. Every few months, I'd get a call from Dad asking if I could help your sister out of a jam. These jams ranged from overdue rent, to car payments, to credit card debt. I estimated that over 5 years I'd contributed nearly $60,000 to keeping Melissa afloat, all while being told it was just until she gets on her feet. The breaking point of this arrangement came during a summer when Lauren and I had planned to use the family vacation home for a week with some friends. When we arrived, we found the place in shambles. Broken furniture, stained carpets, holes in walls, and empty liquor bottles everywhere. Melissa had used the property for a weekend party without telling anyone, then left without cleaning up. I spent 3 days and $4,000 repairing the damage. When I confronted my parents about it, they were apologetic, but made excuses for her behavior. "She's been going through a hard time after her breakup," Mom said. "She probably just needed to blow off some steam." Melissa's response when I called her was even more infuriating. "It's a family property, Octavio. I don't need permission to use it. Besides, you can afford to fix it up. It's not like you have kids to spend money on." The call ended with her promising to be more careful next time, without any offer to reimburse me for repairs. Despite this incident, I continued supporting the family financially. I took pride in being able to help, especially considering my parents had given me a good start in life. The vacation home remained a central gathering place for holidays and summer get-togethers. I enjoyed being the one who made it possible to keep this tradition alive. But beneath this, generosity questions began to form. Why was I constantly expected to bail out my sister? Why did my parents enable her irresponsibility? And, most troublingly, why did it seem like my contributions were taken for granted, while Melissa's smallest efforts were celebrated? I didn't realize that answers to these questions were about to present themselves in the most unexpected and painful way. Last month I drove down to Portland for what I thought would be a routine visit with my parents. Dad had mentioned wanting to discuss some future planning, which I assumed meant their retirement, or perhaps estate planning, sensible topics given they were both in their mid-60s. Lauren encouraged me to go, saying it would be a good opportunity to discuss our own future plans with them, including our intention to start a family in the next year. I arrived on Friday evening to the familiar smell of Mom's pot roast. The conversation over dinner was light: Dad's golf game, Mom's book club, local news. Nothing hinted at the bombshell waiting to detonate our family's foundation. Saturday morning, Dad suggested we meet in his home office after breakfast. "Your mother's going shopping with her friends," he said. "We can talk privately." I thought nothing of it. Dad had always preferred one-on-one conversations about financial matters. While waiting for him to finish a phone call, I browsed the bookshelf in his office. Behind his desk was a credenza, where he kept important documents. One drawer was partially open, and a folder labeled Melissa Trust was visible. Curiosity got the better of me, and I slid the folder out, expecting to find something minor, perhaps a small fund for her persistent emergencies. What I found instead made my blood run cold. Legal documents for a trust fund established 15 years ago, when Melissa was in her first year of college, and I was already working my way through my junior year. The trust held investments and cash valued at just over $2 million. $2 million set aside exclusively for my sister, with no equivalent for me. I was still holding the documents when Dad entered the room. His face fell when he saw what was in my hands. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said quietly, closing the door behind him. Clearly, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "Were you ever going to tell me about this?" Dad took a seat behind his desk, creating a physical barrier between us. "It's complicated, Octavio. Your sister. She's not like you. She needs more help in life. And I don't." The question came out sharper than I intended. "Look at you," he gestured vaguely at me. "Senior software engineer, homeowner, stable relationship. You've always landed on your feet. Melissa struggles with the basics. Because you've never expected her to handle them. You've cushioned her from consequences her entire life, and now you're ensuring she'll never have to grow up." I was standing now, the documents still clutched in my hand. "Meanwhile, I've been subsidizing this family for years. The vacation property, her bailouts, even helping with your property taxes when your business had that downturn." Dad had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We appreciate everything you've done. But it's different. You do those things because you can afford to, because you're successful. And I'm successful because I worked for it. I worked through college, took risks in my career, put in 80-hour weeks when needed. I made my own safety net." "That's my point," Dad said, as if this explained everything. "You don't need what Melissa needs. You've proven that." The injustice of his logic hit me like a physical blow. I was being punished for my responsibility for not being a burden. My success wasn't celebrated, it was used as justification to give more to my sister. "Does Mom know about this?" I asked. "Of course she knows. We made this decision together." When Mom returned from shopping, the atmosphere in the house was glacial. She took one look at us and knew something was wrong. "He found out about Melissa's trust," Dad said simply. Mom's face fell. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "We were going to tell you eventually," she said weakly. "We just didn't want to hurt your feelings." "Well, that worked out great," I replied, the sarcasm barely masking my pain. The rest of the weekend was a blur. Mom tried to smooth things over with favorite meals and reminiscing about happy memories. Dad retreated to his workshop, avoiding direct conversation. I went through the motions of family dinner and Sunday brunch, then made an excuse to leave early. During the 3-hour drive back to Seattle, my mind raced. I calculated roughly how much I'd contributed to family expenses over the years. The vacation, home maintenance, property taxes, repairs Melissa's emergencies, special anniversary gifts for my parents, holiday gatherings I'd hosted. The total came close to $175,000. Not the $2 million in Melissa's trust fund, but a significant amount that I'd given freely, never questioning if it was fair, because family helps family. When I told Lauren what happened, her reaction helped clarify my jumbled thoughts. "They've been taking advantage of your generosity, while secretly ensuring Melissa's future," she said, her lawyer's mind cutting straight to the core issue. "They're not just playing favorites. They're actively creating a system where you subsidize the family while they funnel assets to her." I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but Lauren was right. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the deception, the manipulation, and the fundamental unfairness. "So, what are you going to do?" Lauren asked. That was the question that kept me awake for 3 straight nights. What was I going to do now that I knew the truth? After several sleepless nights, I reached a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I would stop all extra financial support to my family. No more paying for the vacation home, no more bailing out Melissa, no more being the financial safety net while being treated as an afterthought. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice made in anger. I created a detailed spreadsheet tracking every dollar I'd contributed over the past decade. The vacation home alone had cost me nearly $90,000 in taxes, insurance maintenance, and repairs. Melissa's emergencies totaled $65,000. Various family expenses, including helping my parents, when Dad's business struggled, added another $20,000. $175,000. Not an insignificant sum, especially considering I'd been building my own life, simultaneously paying a mortgage, saving for retirement, and planning for my future with Lauren. I drafted a careful email to my parents copying Melissa. Professional, unemotional, clearly stating my decision and my reasons. I explained that discovering the trust fund had forced me to reevaluate my role in the family's finances. I would no longer be contributing to the vacation property expenses or providing financial assistance to Melissa. I wasn't cutting ties. I still wanted to be part of the family, but the financial dynamic needed to change. I've supported this family gladly for years, I wrote. But I cannot continue to do so, knowing that my contributions were never valued equally. The trust fund makes it clear that Melissa's future was prioritized over mine, despite my demonstrated financial responsibility. Going forward, I'll be focusing my resources on building my own family with Lauren. I hit send at 6:30 on a Tuesday morning, then drove to work with my phone turned off. When I finally checked it at lunch, there were 7 missed calls. 3 from Dad, 2 from Mom, and 2 from Melissa, plus a flurry of text messages ranging from confused to angry. Dad's response was dismissive. "You're overreacting. Family helps family. We can discuss this when you've calmed down." Mom was more conciliatory but missed the point. "We love you both equally, Octavio. The trust wasn't about loving Melissa more. Please call me so we can talk about this." Melissa's reaction was exactly what I expected. Real mature bro, punishing everyone because you're jealous of my trust fund. Newsflash, Dad set that up because he knew I needed it more than you. Not everything is about you. I didn't respond to any of them immediately. Instead, I began the process of removing myself from the vacation property's financial obligations. I contacted the insurance company to have my name removed as the paying party. I called the property management company that handled winter maintenance to cancel my contract with them. I transferred the utilities out of my name. Each step felt like removing a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. Lauren supported me completely, helping me draft responses when I struggled to find the right words, and reminding me that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. "You've been conditioned to believe that being the responsible one means carrying everyone else," she pointed out. "That's not fair or sustainable." A week after my email, Dad called again. This time I answered. "This is ridiculous. Octavio," he began without preamble. "The property tax bill came, and your name isn't on the account anymore. As I explained in my email, I'm no longer covering those costs." I replied, keeping my voice level. "So you're just abandoning your responsibilities? This property has been in our family for decades." "It's not my responsibility, Dad. It's yours. You and Mom own it. I've been voluntarily covering the costs as a gift to the family, but given recent revelations, that arrangement no longer works for me." "This is about the trust fund, isn't it? You're punishing all of us because you're jealous of your sister." His words stung, but I held firm. "This isn't about jealousy. It's about recognizing an imbalance and correcting it. You made a choice to set aside $2 million for Melissa's future. That's your right. My choice is to direct my own money toward my future." "What about family loyalty?" he demanded. "Loyalty goes both ways, Dad. Was it loyal to create that trust fund while letting me believe I needed to support the family? Was it loyal to accept hundreds of thousands of dollars from me while secretly ensuring Melissa would never have to contribute?" The call ended with him telling me I was being childish and would regret damaging family relationships over money. But as I hung up, I realized this had never been just about money. It was about respect, honesty, and being valued for who I was, rather than what I could provide. In the weeks that followed, I maintained minimal contact with my family. Mom sent occasional texts, checking in careful to avoid mentioning finances. Dad was notably silent after our call. Melissa sent a few passive-aggressive messages before apparently deciding I wasn't worth the effort. I used this time to focus on my life with Lauren. We finalized plans to buy a larger home, started researching fertility specialists, and even booked a long overdue vacation just for us, not centered around family obligations. For the first time in my adult life, I was making decisions based solely on what was best for me and my partner, without calculating how it would affect my role as the family safety net. It was both liberating and disorienting. I sometimes found myself instinctively checking the calendar for the vacation home's maintenance schedule, or setting aside money for Melissa's inevitable next crisis, only to remember that these weren't my responsibilities anymore. Then 3 weeks after my email, the text arrived that would bring everything to a head. My phone chimed while Lauren and I were having dinner. Dad's name appeared on the screen with a simple message. The property taxes are due. No? Hello? No? Checking how I was doing? Not even a question mark to soften the demand. In that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision. The property tax message marked the beginning of what I can only describe as the family financial reckoning. I responded simply, I explained my position. The trust fund should cover it. Then I turned my phone off and enjoyed the rest of dinner with Lauren. When I checked my messages the next morning, I had 5 missed calls from Dad and a voicemail that started with him yelling before I deleted it. My email inbox contained a lengthy message from him, detailing all the ways I was betraying the family and throwing away years of tradition over petty jealousy. I didn't respond. This wasn't about scoring points in an argument. It was about standing firm in my decision to stop enabling a dysfunctional financial dynamic. The first major crisis came 2 weeks later, when a windstorm hit the area around the vacation property. A large pine tree fell, damaging the corner of the deck and part of the roof. In the past, I would have immediately handled everything, calling the insurance company, finding contractors, paying the deductible, and supervising repairs. Instead, I learned about it when Mom called, her voice tight with stress. The Johnsons next door called to tell us about the damage. Your father is trying to find someone to tarp the roof before more rain comes. I expressed sympathy, but didn't offer assistance. That's tough, Mom. I hope Dad can find someone quickly. Octavio. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. We've never had to deal with this kind of thing. Your father doesn't even know who to call. The property management company has emergency contacts, I replied. I used them last year when the water heater leaked. But they want payment up front, and with the trust fund investments being mostly long-term, she trailed off, realizing what she was revealing. So, the trust fund money isn't actually available for emergencies? I asked, not bothering to hide my surprise. I thought that was the whole point, to provide Melissa with a safety net. It's complicated, Mom sighed. Most of it is in investments that have penalties for early withdrawal. We didn't think we'd need immediate access, since you always handled emergencies. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer. Not only had they created an inequitable financial arrangement, but they had structured their planning around the assumption that I would continue to be the family's problem solver indefinitely. I'm sorry you're facing this challenge, I said carefully, but as I've explained, I'm no longer in a position to handle these expenses. The conversation ended awkwardly, and I felt a mixture of guilt and vindication. Part of me still wanted to swoop in and fix everything that had been my role for so long, but a stronger part recognized that continuing that pattern would only reinforce the dysfunctional dynamics. The second crisis came a month later, with the seasonal turnover of the property. Every spring, the vacation home needed to be de-winterized, pipes checked, water turned on, heating system, serviced dock, put in the lake. I had always coordinated this process, often driving down for a weekend, to handle much of it myself. This year it fell to my parents. Dad called me directly, his tone less demanding than before. The service company says there's a specific sequence for de-winterizing the pipes, he said. Something about pressure testing before turning on the main water valve. That's right, I confirmed. If you turn on the water without testing, you risk major damage from any pipes that crack during freezing temperatures. How do I mean, who handles that? For a moment, I almost slipped back into problem-solving mode. Then I caught myself. Mountain View Property Services does it all. You have their number. They're the ones who've been sending invoices to my account for the past 8 years. There was a long pause. This is ridiculous, Octavio. You know all this information. You've always handled it. Why are you forcing us to fumble through this? I'm not forcing anything, Dad. I'm simply stepping back from responsibilities that were never actually mine. The property belongs to you and Mom. But your sister and her kids use it every summer. Don't you care about them having that experience? This was the first I'd heard about Melissa's hypothetical future children being factored into these decisions. Melissa doesn't have children yet, Dad. And when Lauren and I have kids, what will they get? Access to a property their parents have subsidized, while their aunt gets a multi-million-dollar trust fund. He hung up without responding. The social fallout spread beyond my immediate family. Melissa had apparently shared a highly edited version of events with extended family members and family friends. My cousin texted to ask if I was really cutting off Grandpa's vacation house because I was jealous of Melissa. An aunt called to tell me that family properties were sacred and shouldn't be used as bargaining chips in sibling rivalries. I didn't engage with these mischaracterizations. I simply stated the facts when asked directly. I discovered my parents created a substantial trust fund exclusively for my sister while allowing me to cover significant family expenses. I've decided to focus my financial resources on my own future. Some family members backed off after hearing my side. Others took Melissa's part, perhaps because her version, poor sister, being punished by wealthy vindictive brother, made for a more dramatic story. A few reached out privately to express support, admitting they'd always noticed the disparity in how we were treated, but had never felt it was their place to comment. Through all this, Lauren remained my steadfast supporter. They're trying to make you question your decision by reframing it as an attack on family values, she observed. But you're not destroying anything, you're just refusing to keep paying for everything. The property tax text was followed by similar messages over the next month. The homeowner's insurance is due next week. The dock company needs payment before they'll schedule installation. The roof repair estimate came in at $12,000. Each message assumed I would step in and handle these expenses, despite my clear communication that I would not. Each one came without pleasantries or acknowledgement of the larger issue at hand, and each one strengthened my resolve to maintain the boundaries I'd established. The emotional toll was significant. I'd always defined myself partly through my role as the family supporter and problem solver. Stepping back from that role left me questioning aspects of my identity. Who was I, if not the responsible son, who could be counted on to fix everything? What did it mean to prioritize my needs over family obligations? Therapy helped me navigate these questions, as did conversations with Lauren about the family we were planning to create together, one built on transparency, fairness, and mutual support, rather than hidden expectations and inequitable treatment. 6 weeks after my initial email, the situation came to a head when Mom called in tears. Your father and Melissa had a huge fight about the vacation property, she sobbed. She says if we can't maintain it properly, we should sell it and give her the proceeds since you've abandoned it. The irony was almost too perfect. What did Dad say to that? I asked. He told her that the property wasn't hers to make decisions about. Then she brought up the trust fund, saying if he really thought she needed special financial support, she should have a say in family assets. And he finally saw it, Octavio. He saw what we've created. Mom's voice steadied. We need to have a family meeting, all of us together. Can you come home this weekend? After discussing it with Lauren, I agreed. It was time to face my family and establish a new path forward, not by giving in, but by being clear about what a healthy relationship would look like going forward. That Saturday found me pulling into my parents' driveway with a strange mixture of dread and determination. Lauren had offered to come for moral support, but I decided this was something I needed to handle myself. This was about resolving decades of family dynamics that predated our relationship. Mom opened the door before I could knock, enveloping me in a tight hug. Thank you for coming, she whispered. Dad stood awkwardly in the hallway, offering a stiff nod. Melissa was already seated in the living room, scrolling through her phone with performative disinterest. We gathered around the dining table, the site of countless family meals, holiday celebrations, and now this reckoning. Mom had prepared coffee and Dad's favorite almond cookies, as if normal hospitality could soften the difficult conversation ahead. Dad cleared his throat and began. We're here to discuss the situation with the vacation property and other financial matters. His discomfort with direct emotional conversations was evident in his businesslike tone. Octavio has raised concerns about equity in family financial planning, and we need to address them. Melissa scoffed. Equity. He's making 6 figures in tech and complaining about my trust fund. Meanwhile, I'm barely making ends meet. That's because you spend beyond your means, I replied calmly, and my income is irrelevant to this discussion. This is about the choices made long before I had a successful career. Dad tried to regain control of the conversation. The trust fund was established with specific intentions. Your mother and I observed early on that you two had different capabilities when it came to money management. The trust was designed to provide Melissa with security while acknowledging your self-sufficiency, Octavio. So, I was punished for being responsible, I said. And Melissa was rewarded for being irresponsible. Mom interjected. It wasn't about punishment or reward. We were trying to be fair by giving each of you what we thought you needed. Fair, I couldn't help but laugh. There's nothing fair about secretly setting aside $2 million for one child while accepting hundreds of thousands from the other. That's the opposite of fair. You chose to help with the vacation property, Dad countered. We never forced you. You created an expectation, I corrected him. You raised me to believe that family supports family, that I had a responsibility to contribute. All while knowing you were creating a massive safety net for Melissa that I would never benefit from. Melissa rolled her eyes. Not everything is about money, Octavio. You're right, I agreed, surprising her. It's about honesty, transparency, and equal treatment. None of which happened here. The conversation continued in this vein for nearly an hour, with my parents alternating between defensiveness and attempts at justification. Then I asked the question that would reveal even more than I'd anticipated. When did you first decide to create such different financial trajectories for us? Mom and Dad exchanged glances. What do you mean, Mom asked. The trust fund was established 15 years ago, but the pattern of different treatment started much earlier. I'm wondering when you first decided Melissa would need special financial consideration. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Well, the college funds were the first formal arrangement. College funds, I repeated. What college funds? Another exchange of glances between my parents. Melissa suddenly became very interested in her coffee cup. We established college funds for both of you when you were children, Mom explained hesitantly. Based on the financial advisor's recommendation, we put $100,000 in each. But I had student loans, I pointed out. I worked through college to minimize them, but I still graduated with debt that took years to pay off. Are you saying there was money set aside for my education that I never received? Dad cleared his throat. By the time you reached college age, Melissa's elementary school issues had made it clear she would need more support long term. We reallocated some of your fund to expand hers. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. How much is some? About $70,000, Dad admitted. We intended to make it up to you later, but then your career took off, and it seemed unnecessary. So you took 70% of my college fund, gave it to Melissa, let me work, and take out loans through college, and never told me. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. What else don't I know? The ensuing silence spoke volumes. Finally, Mom said quietly, when my parents passed, they left $50,000 for each grandchild. We added yours to Melissa's trust, thinking you were doing so well with your new job. I stood up abruptly, needing physical distance. This goes beyond financial planning. This is systematic deception. You've been taking resources meant for me and redirecting them to Melissa for decades, all while allowing me to believe I needed to support the family because I was doing well. Melissa finally broke her sullen silence. Why are you making such a big deal about this? So they gave me extra help. I needed it. Not everyone can be perfect like you. This isn't about being perfect, I responded. It's about being treated with basic respect and honesty. You've been given every advantage, many that were actually taken from me, and you still expect more. What am I supposed to do? She demanded. I didn't ask for the trust fund. No, but you've happily accepted it, along with every other financial advantage, all while criticizing me for having boundaries. When was the last time you contributed anything to this family besides drama? Dad tried to intervene. That's not fair, Octavio. None of this is fair, I exclaimed. That's the entire point. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. Mom, who had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts and found the middle ground, slapped her hand on the table. He's right. Her voice was firm. Gregory, he's absolutely right. We've been unfair to Octavio for years. We've taken his contributions for granted while protecting Melissa from every consequence. We've betrayed his trust repeatedly. Dad's mouth fell open. Diana. No, she cut him off. I've gone along with this for too long, telling myself we were doing what was best for both of them. But look at the results. We have one child who's responsible, successful, and now rightfully feels betrayed, and another who at 32 still can't manage basic adult responsibilities. Melissa jumped to her feet. I can't believe you're taking a side. I'm not taking sides, Mom replied calmly. I'm acknowledging reality. And the reality is that our approach has failed both of you in different ways. I hadn't expected this support from Mom. It shifted something in the emotional landscape of the room. For the first time, I felt truly seen by at least one parent. I don't want to cut ties with this family, I said, more composed now. But I need things to change. I need acknowledgement of the inequity, and I need clear boundaries going forward. What kind of boundaries? Dad asked cautiously. Financial independence, I stated clearly. The vacation property is yours, to maintain or sell as you see fit. I won't be contributing to its upkeep anymore. I won't be bailing Melissa out of her financial crises. I'll participate in family gatherings and maintain relationships, but not as the family bank. And if we need help, Dad asked, then we have an honest conversation about it, with full transparency, about all resources available, including Melissa's trust fund. No more assumptions that I'll handle everything, because I'm doing well. Mom nodded. That's completely reasonable. Melissa, however, wasn't finished. This is ridiculous. You're punishing everyone because you're jealous. Some brother you are. I've been a better brother than you've been a sister, I replied evenly. I've supported you financially for years despite your ingratitude. I've covered for your irresponsibility countless times. I've maintained family traditions with my own money, while you contributed nothing. And I've done it all without complaining, until I discovered how deeply the deck was stacked against me. I never asked you to do any of that. No, but you happily benefited from it. You used the vacation property whenever you wanted, even damaging it and leaving me to fix it. You accepted every bailout without ever changing your behavior. You've taken and taken, while giving nothing back. Her face flushed red. You think you're so perfect. Some of us have real struggles, not your charmed life. My life isn't charmed. I've worked for everything I have. I put in the hours, made the sacrifices, delayed gratification. The difference between us isn't luck or capability, it's choices. Melissa stood up so violently, her chair fell backward. You have no idea what it's like to be me. To always be compared to perfect Octavio. To know, I'll never measure up. Why shouldn't I get something you don't for once? And there it was, the core of her entitlement laid bare. In Melissa's mind, the trust fund wasn't about need. It was about balancing some perceived cosmic scoreboard, where my successes had to be offset by giving her financial advantages. Dad looked stricken. Is that really how you see it, Melissa? As some kind of compensation prize? Why else would you give it to me? She shot back. It's obvious you think I can't make it on my own. You think I need a financial babysitter for life. Well, if that's what you think, then yes, I want every penny I can get, and I don't care if it's fair to him. She jabbed a finger in my direction. Mom's face fell. That was never our intention. We wanted to ensure both our children were secure, just in different ways. By stealing from one to give to the other, I asked quietly. By lying about it for decades. No one had an answer for that. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by Melissa's angry breathing. Finally, Dad spoke. We made mistakes. Serious ones. I can see that now. He looked directly at me for what felt like the first time in years. I'm sorry, son. We thought we were making the best decisions for both of you, but we were wrong. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of everything, but it was a start. More than I had expected, honestly. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. We can't undo the past, but we can do better going forward. All of us. She looked pointedly at Melissa, who was still standing arms crossed defensively. Whatever, Melissa muttered. When you're done with the pity party for the rich tech guy, let me know if we're selling the vacation property. I could use my share for a down payment on a condo. She stormed out, slamming the front door behind her. Dad sighed heavily. We really messed up with her, didn't we? I couldn't disagree. You tried to help, but in ways that ultimately hurt her ability to stand on her own. And you hurt our relationship in the process. Can we fix this? Mom asked softly. Can we rebuild trust? I don't know, I answered honestly. But today was a start. The months following our confrontation were challenging. Family systems don't change overnight, especially those built on decades of established patterns. For several weeks, communication was minimal. The occasional text from Mom, checking in silence from Dad, and complete radio silence from Melissa. I focused on my own life during this time. Lauren and I closed on our new home, a beautiful craftsman with a yard big enough for future children to play in. I received a promotion at work, leading a new development team for an exciting project. We began the process of fertility treatments, hopeful that the following year would bring the child we both wanted. 6 weeks after our family meeting, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a letter from Dad, handwritten, which was unusual for him. He had always preferred typed communications for anything important. Dear Octavio, it began. I've started this letter a dozen times over the past weeks, searching for the right words. There may not be any perfect words to address the harm I've caused, but I owe you the effort of trying. I've been reflecting on our family dynamics, particularly how differently we treated you and Melissa. What began as a genuine desire to support each child according to their needs became something inequitable and damaging. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the fact that parental love should be expressed equally, even if support takes different forms. The trust fund was the most obvious manifestation of this imbalance, but as our conversation revealed, the pattern went much deeper and started much earlier. I betrayed your trust repeatedly by redirecting resources meant for you to your sister, all while accepting your generous contributions to the family. I can't undo those decisions, but I want you to know that I see them clearly now. I see how unfair they were to you, and how they enabled behaviors in Melissa that have made her life more difficult, not less. We've decided to sell the vacation property. It holds wonderful memories, but it's become a symbol of an unhealthy dynamic. More practically, without your assistance, we simply cannot maintain it properly. The proceeds will be divided a portion to secure our retirement and equal portions set aside for you and Melissa. Additionally, I've established a new investment fund in your name with $120,000, an attempt to acknowledge the college fund and inheritance that should have been yours. It's not the full amount with decades of potential growth, but it's what we can manage now. None of this erases the past, but I hope it demonstrates my commitment to doing better going forward. I miss you, son. I'm proud of the man you've become largely without the support you deserved from me. I hope we can rebuild our relationship on more honest ground. With love and regret, Dad. The letter brought unexpected tears. It wasn't perfect. Some justification still lingered between the lines, but it represented real reflection and a genuine attempt at amends. I called him that evening, our first direct conversation in weeks, that wasn't strained or confrontational. Rebuilding trust was a slow process. Mom and Dad came to Seattle to see our new home. We had dinner, talked about my work, Lauren's environmental cases, and their retirement plans. We didn't discuss Melissa or financial matters that first visit, focusing instead on reestablishing a personal connection. Melissa remained distant for nearly 3 months. Her first communication was a terse email after the vacation property sold, acknowledging receipt of her portion of the proceeds and noting that she'd used it to pay off credit card debt rather than buy the condo she'd in blank mentioned. It wasn't an olive branch exactly, but it wasn't hostile either. Gradually, a new family equilibrium emerged. Dad and I developed a different kind of relationship, more equal, less defined by financial expectations. He began asking my advice about investment strategies for their retirement, treating me as a knowledgeable adult rather than just a source of funds. Mom blossomed in surprising ways once freed from her role as family peacemaker. She joined a hiking club, took a part-time position, teaching art at a community center, and seemed happier than I'd seen her in years. The most significant change came 4 months after our confrontation, when Dad called to tell me he'd done something important. "I met with our financial advisor and lawyer yesterday," he said. "I've established a fund for your future children equal to what remains in Melissa's trust. It will be available for their education or whatever needs arise." "Dad, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted. "It's important to me that your children have the same opportunities as Melissa's, should she have any. Equal treatment starts now, even if it can't erase the past." This gesture meant more than the money itself. It represented acknowledgement and a commitment to fairness going forward. It was healing in a way that words alone couldn't be. Melissa's journey toward responsibility was slower and less direct. The withdrawal of both my financial support and the vacation property sale proceeds, which she quickly depleted, forced her to confront her spending habits for the first time. She took a financial management course and began therapy to address some of the emotional issues underlying her financial behavior. Our relationship remained complicated. We were cordial at family gatherings, but not close. Perhaps we never would be given our history, but there was a new honesty between us that felt healthier than the resentment-filled dynamic of before. As for me, the experience transformed how I viewed family obligations, financial boundaries, and my own self-worth. I realized I had tied much of my identity to being the responsible one, the provider, the problem solver. Stepping back from those roles forced me to develop a more balanced sense of self. In therapy, I explored why I had accepted such an inequitable arrangement for so long. Part of it was conditioning the lifetime of messages that Melissa needed more help, but part was also my own need for validation through being needed. By being the family financial savior, I had secured a role and recognition, even if it came at a cost. Learning to set boundaries wasn't just about money. It was about recognizing my inherent value beyond what I could provide. It was about understanding that love shouldn't be conditional on utility. Most importantly, it was about building a future where these patterns wouldn't be repeated with my own children. Lauren and I welcomed our daughter Eleanor, 8 months after the family confrontation. Holding her for the first time, I made a silent promise that she would grow up in a home where love was expressed through equity, honesty, and respect, not through financial manipulation or different standards for different children. Dad and Mom embraced their role as grandparents with joy, careful to demonstrate the equal treatment they had failed to provide as parents. The investment fund for Eleanor remained untouched, a safety net rather than a replacement for teaching her financial responsibility. Melissa met her niece when Eleanor was 3 months old. Something about holding that tiny innocent being seemed to affect her deeply. She sent a text afterward that simply said, "She deserves better than what we had." Both of us did. It was perhaps the closest thing to an acknowledgement I would ever get from her about our shared past, and in its own way it was enough. The journey from discovery to resolution taught me lessons I carry forward every day. First, that true family loyalty isn't expressed through financial sacrifice, but through honesty, respect, and treating each member with fairness. Second, that enabling others often hurts them more than it helps, robbing them of the chance to develop resilience and capability. Third, that boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential for healthy relationships and personal growth. And finally, that it's never too late to break dysfunctional patterns and create new, healthier ones. Standing up for myself was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Facing the anger, guilt, and manipulation that followed tested my resolve daily. But on the other side of that struggle was freedom. Freedom from unjust expectations, from thankless sacrifice, and from a lifetime of inequality. If you're facing similar family dynamics, know that you have every right to establish boundaries, even when those boundaries are painted as selfish or disloyal. Your value isn't determined by what you provide. Your worth isn't measured in dollars contributed or problems solved. Have you ever had to stand up against unfair family, financial expectations? What boundaries have you established in your own relationships? Drop a comment below. Sharing your experience, your story, might help someone else find the courage to stand up for themselves. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about family dynamics, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others and yourself is to break unhealthy patterns, even when it's difficult.